Westminster Mayor and Common Council's Finance Committee. I believe the first item on the agenda is a discussion of the Family Fitness Center. Ms. Matthews, would you like to lead that off?
Actually, we had the first item as being the Personnel Committee recommendation for the compensation plan.
All right, well,
that's okay. I was just hoping that.
That's fine. It's hard to have everything on just one little screen, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're okay with that,
Sure.
We'll just go ahead. I thought that way Ms. Childs could basically drop off
Right. Okay.
when this part of it is done.
All right, go ahead, Ms.
So if you
Childs.
can just give me a minute. Shannon, I was going to share a presentation, but it's disabled, the sharing the screen.
Yeah, let me make you into a co-host. Sorry about that. I thought I already had you as a co-host. There you go.
Okay. Hopefully, is it showing everybody?
Not yet.
Okay. Is it not up?
No.
Let me try it again, Shannon. Sorry, everybody. I'm not sure what's going on here.
Okay.
Oh, starting.
Is it starting?
There you go. You have it up.
Is it there? Okay, thank you. Sorry, haven't had enough caffeine apparently this morning. So basically, as you know, just kind of run through, I think all of you have been involved with the Comp and Class study since the very beginning. So I don't think you need a lot of background, but basically, as you all know, we implemented the study results beginning in FY 2019 with the adoption of a new salary structure, bringing employee salaries as necessary up to the new pay grade minimum. And at that time, there were approximately 90 employees who received a study adjustment in order to bring their salaries up to minimum. Phase 2, which was implemented in the current fiscal year, FY 2020, was sort of the city's initial first step to address salary compression issues, and we had roughly 100 employees who received a comp and class adjustment in Phase 2. Phase 3, as originally envisioned for 2021, was envisioned as a mirror image of Phase 2. What that basically meant was that if you got an adjustment in Phase 2, you would get the same amount as an adjustment in Phase 3. So that was the original plan, and that's what's currently in the budget that you all have considered. Under that plan, 80 employees were scheduled to receive an adjustment. The difference between the 100 in Phase 2 and the 80 in the initial Phase 3 was because of turnover or people being promoted in the intervening time. So what's currently in your proposed budget are adjustments for those 80 people. Budgeted cost, all funds, was approximately $78,000. And the FY 2021 budget proposal included all the associated fringe benefit costs that are driven by increases in employee salaries. As you all know, on May 11th, the direction from the Common Council was to basically charge Ms. Gruber with eliminating the fitness center deficit by coming up with a plan, and you're the second part of that review through the committee structure, and obviously she'll be presenting her plan to you later in this meeting. In conjunction with the fitness center deficit elimination plan, staff was directed to develop a new or an enhanced Phase 3 plan, basically to try to make more headway with dealing with salary compression issues. Ms. Childs and I have gone through a variety of options working with Evergreen. The one that we're presenting today, I think we presented Darlene Wright to the Personnel Committee Wednesday afternoon. And actually, we didn't settle on this plan until Wednesday morning. So we've gone through a variety of options. And those initial options essentially entailed a tweaking of the originally proposed Phase 3 plan after considering that and trying to, I guess, take our best assessment of what your goals were, we ended up on Wednesday morning coming up with this new plan, basically, which is no longer a mirror image of the Phase 2 adjustments. That approach didn't seem to accomplish at least what our understanding of your goals were. So what we basically ask Evergreen to do is to essentially kind of age the class tenure numbers that are in what we call the solutions file through July 1st of 2020. All of the comp and class adjustments are driven by how much time the employee has actually been in their current position classification, not by total city tenure. So what that meant by kind of aging the file, if you will, is that an employee who may not have been eligible for a Phase 3 adjustment as originally envisioned because they hadn't been in their position for one full year as of July 1st, 2019, now has the potential to basically get a comp and class adjustment because we once again upgraded the class tenure figures to carry it through July 1st of 2020. What that meant is, as opposed to the original number of employees who were scheduled to get adjustments, it goes up to 108 employees. And I'll show you a kind of a side-by-side comparison in a minute. One of the challenges that, to say the least, we've had is that there's so many different pieces of the budget that all interrelate with one another, including this one. We wanted to present this plan to both the Personnel Committee and to the Finance Committee, but what we have not done at this point is because there's a tremendous amount of work involved, is to basically take this plan and sort of put it through position budgeting to figure out what the total cost is. So as opposed to the original figure that we gave you, the estimated cost to all funds for the enhanced Phase 3 plan is approximately $156,000. That's inclusive of everything. So once again, consider this to be a new plan. That $156,000 figure does not include the full cost of resulting benefit increases. There are some benefit increases that were put into the original budget, but obviously what we're estimating to spend is about double what we originally proposed. And we've not once again had the opportunity to run it through position budgeting. Some figures that might be of interest: for each dollar increase in a sworn officer salary, the city incurs a 44-cent increase in benefits. For each dollar increase in other staff salaries, the city realizes a 19-cent increase in benefits. So particularly on the sworn officer side, the benefit impacts are very material to the overall financial impact of what we're doing. The other thing that we have not yet factored in are kind of two other things. We pay a salary surcharge, if you will, to those who are serving in the CIB unit. And as you all know, we went to a new patrol schedule in March, which means, and Darlene might have to help me with the number, but instead of working 2,080 hours a year, the patrol officers, I believe it's 2,184, Ms. Childs, is that correct?
That is correct.
So we've not factored all that in. Once again, we would do that through position budgeting, but it is an incredibly time-consuming exercise to touch 150 roughly employee files. So this $156,000 number is not the full budgetary impact, I guess is my point. And those impacts have yet to be determined. Once again,
Ms. Matthews, before we move on, because this is significant. We shouldn't brush over this.
No, we shouldn't.
One of the questions I have is, first of all, how much more do we think this is going to cost than the $156,000? Because we only had a limited amount of money that we were putting towards this.
Right. One thing, and it's a good question, Council President Pecoraro, and so keep in mind that of this $156,000, about half of that amount, as well as the associated benefit increases, are already factored into the budget. I would say staff's intent in looking at this would be, I guess for lack of a better way of putting it, we probably aimed on the lower side because we knew that we had to factor all those increases in. But once again, the only way we're going to know that is to run it through position budgeting. So my guess is that with what we've proposed, and once again, that was intentional, is we tried to give Evergreen a figure to work with that we knew by the time we factored in all the benefit increases could be accommodated. And candidly did not sit there and try to say that we were going to spend every bit of the estimated $209,000 in the general fund of closing the fitness center, eliminating the fitness center deficit. I think these things all work together, and one of the things I think we need to be cognizant of at this point is that we have no revenue coming in from the fitness center because by state law we can't open it, and at this juncture we are still carrying the staff cost of the benefited staff associated with the fitness center. So, you know, I think we're safe, I guess, Council President Pecoraro, in regard to your question that this can be accommodated with the direction you have given us. Our concern, meaning Ms. Childs and mine, is probably more that there may be an expectation on the part of either the Finance Committee or your colleagues that somehow we were going to come up with a plan that spent every single dollar. And I guess what I'm trying to say to you is I don't know that this plan does that, in all candor.
Right.
And truthfully, I'm not sure we should be trying to do that because the plan that Ms. Gruber is about to present for the fitness center is understandably based on a full year of activity. And I don't think any of us believe that that fitness center is going to be opened as of July 1st by state law.
All right. Well, my concern was that we were talking about, you know, spending significantly more than the money that we had thought we were saving. I just want to make sure that that's not the case, because then we're creating, you know, a different problem for ourselves.
Right. Ms. Childs, feel free to jump in here. But I mean, I guess two comments. One is that, like I say, we aimed on the lower side because we wanted to make sure it could be accommodated. And I guess two other points, if I may, is one, there's the complication, as I mentioned, with, you know, when we'll be able to open the fitness center and what that all looks like.
Right.
This is an all funds cost, so I do want to just caution you all that while you were trying to identify a funding source in the general fund, you know, some of this figures that we're showing you are going to ricochet through the water fund, the sewer fund, and the fiber fund. And
right. No,
funding in those
that.
funds, yeah, I think some of your colleagues, based on some conversations we had at the Personnel Committee, I'm not sure 100% do understand that. So there's different financial issues here. And then Ms. Childs also brought up a point with me that I think that she raised in a conversation that we had with the mayor and the council president. I think we also need to be cognizant that this is going to be an ongoing process for the city to make sure that employees are progressing through the range. And I do feel compelled to caution you all about not trying to basically make everything so tight in FY 2021 that we then limit our flexibility going forward to continue to be able to progress employees through the ranges in FY 2022 and 23 and beyond. Because these are ongoing costs, and I think that's the concern, Council President Pecoraro, I believe you're raising.
Right. The other question I had is,
excuse me.
So I thought that one of the things we were really focused on with this project was to, you know, to kind of deal with the compression issues. If we're doing increases for 108 employees, are we you know, doing anything about compression, or are we just continuing the compression?
This is addressing compression, and I think this is where people may have different ideas. The stated goal that we heard on May 11th was that you wanted to do more to deal with compression. And there are going to be employees that I imagine some of you may have heard from who, you know, are long tenured employees who are fairly newly promoted to positions, you know, many of whom would get something through this process, but there are no salary compression issues. So there's a difference between someone's tenure with the city itself and someone's tenure in their position classification. And tenure is going to be driven by, I mean, compression is going to be driven by how long you've been in your actual position. So, you know, if I'm a police officer and I just started with the city, I don't have a compression issue. There's a advancement through the pay ranges that's a concern. And Ms. Childs, you certainly, this is more your area of expertise than mine. Would you like to jump in and offer some comments?
Well, I think what we did do is when we originally looked at it, We were addressing in a mirror image of last year. And we felt like that probably, based on what we heard, was not doing enough to get employees where maybe they thought they should be and you thought they should be. One of the things that previously we had done was anyone that was newly promoted, as Ms. Matthews said, there weren't compression issues there, so we weren't giving them increases. In the comp and class part of it, they were still getting the 2%. What this did, as Ms. Matthews said, was go back to give them a year in their class. So somebody that was newly promoted is going to get an adjustment. So then if someone else got promoted into that same position, there would be a difference there, other than just the 2%. I'm not sure, does that help?
Yeah, I think what I have heard from some employees, which is not what salary compression is per se, is that there were employees who were here, for example, in the late 2000s when, the city, like everyone else, was dealing with the impact of the national recession. And, basically the city either gave bonuses in certain years or, did not give raises at all, like many other jurisdictions across the country did not. This is not intended to make up for that. That's a different issue. This is intended to look at where is someone in their pay grade, where they are today, and, trying to make sure that we are increasing the spread between an employee who's been an equipment operator, for example, for 10 years, and someone who's been an equipment operator for 1 year. I think if your question, Council President Pecoraro, is this plan, either initial or enhanced, dealing with that issue, I think I can safely say the answer is yes. But it is not intended to go back and make up for what happened in the late 2000s. Those are two entirely separate issues.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay. So basically, once again, I do want to remind everyone that these are not, the numbers are remarkably similar, so try not to get, actually they're almost identical, but that's just happenstance. So on top of what we're talking about with the phase 3 plan is that all benefited staff is scheduled to get a 2% across the board adjustment. And so that's about, based on our current payroll and the number of positions that are filled, that's 149 staff members. This is identical, but that's just happenstance. The current projected cost for the 2% across the board adjustment is also $156,000, with the average employee salary increase for the 2% across the board being just about $1,042. So kind of looking side by side with the phase 3, the plan that we originally proposed, all funds cost was approximately $78,000. The plan that we're presenting to you today is $156,000. Originally, we projected that there would be 80 employees receiving a phase 3 adjustment. That number now would be 108. These are all average figures, but we thought they might, Evergreen calculates them, so we thought they might be of interest. The original plan, the average salary adjustment in terms of dollars was $983. It would now increase to $1,440, and on a percentage basis, the original plan had a 1.8% average employee salary adjustment, just strictly for phase 3. Once again, not factoring in the 2% across the board. That would go from 1.8 to an average of 2.7.
Ms. Matthews?
Yeah.
So I understand that the averages that we're looking at is an average of the actual salary per employee, but just to get a better idea of the average increase, like, do we have a number for the median? Just so I know what, like, the actual, I'm trying to get an idea of how the money's distributed. So, I mean, we have an average, but if we could have a median.
We can calculate that and send that to you. That is not, Darlene, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that was on Evergreen's information.
I just want to have an idea of how spread out it is, and if I have an average and a median, I can kind of get an idea of how spread out it is. I mean, it won't give me the exact idea, but it'll help.
We can certainly provide that information. I mean, I think Darlene and I tended to look more at percentages and dollars. Ms. Childs, jump in, but I believe the lowest phase 3 adjustment was probably a couple $100, and then there were employees who were getting up to, I remember one was like 4,000 and something.
That
you
is
know,
correct. That's
Right, but we would have to actually sort those numbers. Mayor Dominic can sort of look at what the median actually is.
Okay. I have a feeling it's going to be pretty close because at 108, it's distributed, I think, pretty, across a pretty, large number of people. I just didn't know if, a smaller group was disproportionately getting more money or not. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
So that's all we had in terms of the presentation. If there's no questions about that, I'll just go ahead and take down the presentation. Is that all right, Council President Pecoraro?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. So I think at this juncture, what we still need to do in order to get to a budget ordinance, this is not the only issue, but is basically be able to, I guess, finalize the phase 3 plan and then basically put all the new numbers into position budgeting and basically have it recalculate all the benefit costs so we can get the total cost impact as well as making sure that we are allocating the increases in the appropriate funds. So I don't know at this juncture, Council President Pecoraro, where you'd like to go as the chair of the committee.
Well, we want to get this wrapped up. So what else, and what do you need from us in terms of any decisions? I mean, if you go along with this plan, you'll need to finish your calculations. And
right. The personnel committee, I don't know if you got a formal recommendation, but obviously Ms. Childs, Mayor Dominic, and I were on those calls. They were supportive of the plan. I guess at this point, if this committee supports it, you've pretty much every member of the elected body, with the exception of Councilmember Dayhoff, has been part of one committee review or another.
Okay.
So I guess we just need to know that we're good to go from the perspective of the Finance Committee, because like I say, there probably is almost a day or more of work still yet to do to get this into the budget ordinance itself.
Anybody have any objections? All right, hearing none, I think you can go ahead then.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
I think your next item was the discussion of the Recreation and Parks Committee recommendation, the plan to eliminate the fitness center operating deficit.
Okay.
Ms. Gruber and Ms. Mullendor are on the call. I don't know if you want her to walk through her plan or how you'd like to proceed.
Yes, please. Ms. Gruber, would you go ahead and do that? Do we need to unmute Ms. Gruber?
She looks like she's unmuted already, as best as I can tell.
Yeah, she's unmuted. I think her and Heather are coordinating to pull up the presentation.
Okay.
Sounds like whoever's talking has two sources of audio. So there is some feedback.
Can you hear from this? Yeah.
Ooh.
You both have your, oh, there you go. So Abby's unmuted, so that might work better, ladies.
Can you hear now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear
Hey,
you.
Heather. Then your presentation was up and then it went back down.
We need a, we're experiencing technical difficulties, splash screen to throw up during all of this. Maybe I can bust out Illustrator and make one myself and send it over to you.
There you go.
Is there anything else we want to cover or talk about while we're trying to figure this out?
I guess if you all would like, I mean, we could jump to the pool improvements if you'd like to talk about that.
Right? We need Ms. Gruber for that too, though, don't we? Well, it looks like we lost her completely now.
Yeah, she's off.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Can hear you, Heather, yes.
Okay, so I'm here with Miss Gruber, so I'm gonna try to share the screen. Can you still hear us?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you, and it's on the screen, Heather.
Perfect. So I'll
There you
have
go.
Abby go ahead and begin the presentation. Okay, good morning. My apologies for that. I received a new laptop just a couple of days ago, and apparently I don't have all of my settings correct at this point in time to be zooming into meetings. So I'll work through those bugs later. The plan that was submitted before you contemplates a three-pronged approach to eliminating the Family Fitness Center's operating deficit. This plan will be achieved through the following actions. First, reductions in full-time benefited and temporary staff, modest reductions in operating hours in group fitness classes, and an increase in monthly membership rates, plus the addition of an annual maintenance fee. As noted in the staff memo submitted to the Recreation and Parks Committee and forwarded to the Finance Committee, and as you can see on the screen before you, the proposed reductions in full-time benefited and temporary staff will result in a total savings of $169,000 and change. And I know Ms. Matthews pointed out that the estimated cost for phase 2 of the comp and class study, or phase 3 of the comp and class study, would be $156,000, and noted that there was concern that we might not be earning revenue at the beginning of this fiscal year for the Family Fitness Center because of state regulations. So I did want to note that that $169,000 is sufficient in salary savings to compensate for what is estimated to be the monies that would be needed to put towards phase 3 of comp and class. So obviously, if we are reducing staff to compensate for the reduction in full-time benefited staff and temporary employees, we need to make service modifications. So the following service modifications are recommended in this plan. New operating hours for the fitness center would be Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Saturdays and Sundays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. New operating hours for childcare services would be Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. and Monday through Friday evenings from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Then we would have Saturday childcare hours from 8 a.m. until 11 a.m. Lastly, a proposed reduction in the number of group fitness classes offered on a weekly basis. Currently, the Family Fitness Center holds 50 classes per week, and we would certainly reduce that to approximately 40 classes per week. To improve the Family Fitness Center's revenue position, the following changes in membership classifications are suggested. 2 new membership classifications, city resident and non-city resident, plus the addition of a new family membership category, family memberships with childcare. This membership category addresses a higher monthly membership rate for those utilizing childcare services. Those rates are as follows. In the city resident category, a family would pay $50 per month, family with childcare, $65 per month, individual, $25 per month, youth student, $18 per month, and childcare, $20 per month. Non-city residents would pay $55 per month for a family membership, $70 per month for a family with childcare membership, $30 as an individual, $20 for the youth and student membership, and $25 for childcare. I know there was concern over the fact that the difference between city resident and non-resident rates were not very large. However, one of the things that we did take into consideration when we were researching rates was what people were currently paying and accustomed to paying. And as we have discovered, our rates have not changed for a very long time, dating back to the late 90s. And so certainly we didn't want to be too aggressive in creating this new category, because we wanted to be able to have room to grow and respond to the increase in minimum wage that we will see that sharply increases in 2023. So in addition to the increase in monthly membership rates, each membership would pay a $40 annual maintenance fee. And I believe we have a spreadsheet that we can provide. There you go. As shown on the spreadsheet, the proposed increase in monthly membership fees will result in approximately $68,568 in additional revenue. Plus, the implementation of an annual maintenance fee will increase revenues by $24,640 for a total revenue increase of $93,208. Factoring in anticipated historical revenue of $200,000, plus the additional revenue achieved through the proposed membership rate increases, it is forecasted that fiscal year 21 revenues will total approximately $293,008, with expenditures totaling $292,349. As illustrated, the proposed personnel expenditure reductions teamed with membership rate increases and the implementation of an annual maintenance fee will result in budget neutrality for fiscal year 2021. That concludes my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Gruber?
Mr. President.
Mr. Yingling?
So I don't understand something about childcare, and I want to understand it better. So if I'm paying the new fee, hold on, let me get to it, of like a family, okay, $70 a month with childcare. How does the childcare work? Like, I come in with my 2 children, 3 children, and then work out. You have childcare for an hour, 2 hours. Like, are there limits on that? How does that work? Can you better explain that to me?
Sure. So childcare is the childcare with the family membership. Yes, you can come in if you have 2 or 3 children. You can come in, put your child or children into daycare and work out for 1 hour. We actually have a 2-hour maximum time limit for childcare. And what we've done is we've put some limits. There weren't limits on how many people you could have on a family membership in the past. Actually, we believe it was probably up to 10 household members. But we couldn't find really anything that was concrete on that. So the proposed family membership rates include a family membership that would be 3 or more people without childcare. And the new limit for family memberships includes 6 immediate family members with a maximum of 2 adults 19 and over, spouses and unmarried children or stepchildren living at the same residence. So if the number of children on a family membership with childcare includes more than 4 children of childcare age, which is 0 to 11 years, then a childcare membership must be purchased as an add-on service for each child, for each additional child.
So in what I'm hearing then, in theory, I could then come in, work out 3 days a week, and have 3 children in childcare for up to 2 hours, 3 days a week for an entire month.
That is correct, yes. For the $70 per month, family with childcare membership class.
So in your market analysis, when you set these rates, what did you look at in terms of childcare of our competitors and your pricing? Because to me, I'm thinking to myself now, I'm like, wow, if I'm a, individual, and let's make it simple, one child, and I can get up to, if I work out 3 days a week, which I think is probably fair, I can get up to 6 hours of childcare that week times 4 weeks. That's 24 hours of childcare for like $15 a month. I think we're getting shortchanged on that.
So I certainly understand where you're coming from, and it was a discussion that we had. However, it's not like you can come in and put your children into this childcare situation and leave and go to the grocery store or take a class at community college. So we really didn't, we compared what we were charging with what other gyms charge who also have childcare as an amenity. We certainly didn't compare what we were charging for childcare services at the gym in comparison to what a traditional daycare would charge, because it's really two different types of services.
Yeah, that's, no, I get that. You're not gonna, I get that. Okay.
So, and before our prior rates basically were $45, and we didn't have any limits on what defined a family or how many children you could put in there, and it was unlimited. So
And when
was included.
And now that you said this was prior to this plan, or was that another time that you changed that?
Currently, that's what it is. So prior to this plan, yes, and currently, that is what the rate is at this point.
Wow. Okay. All right. Thank you. That clears something up for me.
You're welcome.
Right. Well, it sounds like a lot of progress in terms of you're charging some reasonable fees for the many services that people get out of the family center. So that's, I appreciate that very much. Any other thoughts on this, or comments or questions?
No, I mean, so I had, I kind of already had my first round of this with the Parks and Rec committee, and the one thing that I saw that the only thing I saw that I thought needed to be a little more was the differential between the city and non-city residents. That was it. Mm-hmm. Looking at this industry, it's just a really, so I guess just to give some background, when we had the Parks and Rec committee meeting, I asked, I was going to ask Ms. Gruber this question. She kind of answered it right before I was going to ask, which was, what was the pricing basis used? Was it a cost basis? Was it based on competition? And, she kind of, she said it was mostly based on competition, which I think is probably the closest thing there is to a standard in the gym industry. If there is a standard, because a lot of gyms are kind of all over the place in the spectrum. But you got to remember, most gym models are based on not necessarily selling people on coming into the gym and using facilities. It's really based around selling memberships to people that aren't going to use them. When you look at a lot of, like how Planet Fitness that charges, the $10 a month, whatever, they're really just selling memberships and hoping people use them for a couple months and then stop and keep paying the bill. So, and that's typically how childcare is looked at. It's just another feature that makes people comfortable getting a membership. It gets rid of a objection while someone's selling a membership, or a thought in someone's head, like, I don't know if I can get in here often enough with my kids. So all of that considered, I think the pricing it's certainly going in the right direction. Whether or not it's enough or too much, I mean, no one really is going to know until we do it. I think it's probably a pretty good shot at it. Again, the only thing that I thought was that the city and non-city, because one of the biggest issues, I think, that we all agree is an issue. We may disagree on how big of an issue it is, but I think we all agree that the fact that more people use the gym, aren't city residents paying city taxes, and it's a subsidized service, and we're trying to correct that. That's one way that we can do it. We obviously don't want it to be too much. We don't want to price ourselves, out of the market. But I think $5, at least across the board, might be too small. I think maybe, the fact that it's the same no matter what level of membership it is might be the actual issue that I'm seeing. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that's the one issue I see. I think everything else, I think was right in line with where it probably should be.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say I sort of agree with the mayor on this. I think that one of the concerns that a lot of people have expressed is what the differential should be between the city and county residents, or city and non-city residents, because we have people from Pennsylvania apparently who are members. And I think that maybe Ms. Gruber, you might think about. So this is my understanding of the way you're presenting this is these are the fees you're planning to institute for this year when we reopen. We are going to see, as you noted, some increases in costs because the state's minimum wage is going to increase, and that's going to affect how we do business. And maybe as you look at future increases, we start expanding that difference, between the city and county residents a little bit, by $1 or $2, just to not that it's makes it huge or off-putting, but I think it creates a little bit more of what the mayor was looking for there in terms of putting a little bit more financial burden on those who are not city residents and not paying city taxes.
Yes, that was something that we had discussed, that this wouldn't be the end of fee increases, but it would be an initial establishment of the two different categories of city resident and non-city resident. And then when we essentially, our members become accustomed to paying higher rates, then we can continue to make some necessary increases in that category so that the gap between what city residents pay and what non-city residents pay increases. It's just, again, as I said during my presentation, one of the things that we wanted to take into consideration was what everyone was accustomed to paying.
Sure.
And then, to develop these two new categories, we felt like we couldn't be too incredibly aggressive.
Yeah, and I think that there's going to be greater attention in the legislative body to reviewing fees on a regular basis all across the board, because it seems that we haven't done that in some time in a number of ways, and we missed some things. So I think that an annual review will help us think about where we ought to be setting these going forward, and make sure that we don't let many years pass by without making adjustments. Organizations that do that always wind up losing money, and then when they do have to make the necessary increases, there's a lot of sticker shock for their the people who are their patrons, and we want to avoid that.
Well, I think one of the issues again is one of the things that people point out is it's been so long since we've raised rates, and to an extent they're right, because we haven't raised rates since like the early to mid 90s, and through the 90s gym memberships did go up, but toward the late 90s into the 2000s the trend started to reverse. The models changed. A $30 gym membership for an individual was the norm back in most of the 90s, and then some of the nicer gyms would have $40, $50 memberships if they had things like pools and stuff like that were included. But then the models flipped. You had your Quests, and then your Planet Fitness, and then even Golds and other gyms started to follow the trend, which was they were lowering the prices of memberships and making their money other ways. Again, the models vary. Some just try to sell memberships and keep them so low that when people don't come in, it's so low at $10 or whatever it is that they say, okay, well, I'll eventually go back in. So I don't want to cancel, because at some point, and everyone thinks they're going to go to the gym at some point, and they usually do, no matter for how long. Or they have models, and sometimes it's a blend of these two, where they sell a membership that's inexpensive, but they have other ways of making money, whether it's a smoothie bar, a towel service, or they really push things like personal training, or maybe they have different packages. It's common to have a base package that's $10, $15, and then another package that's a little more that includes tanning or group classes, because maybe group classes aren't included, all the way up, and they have larger packages. But my point is, gym memberships, for a base membership, they've gone down over the last decade, and maybe a little bit more than a decade, last 10, 20 years. So the idea that the prices were never raised isn't absurd. It's not when people hear that and they say it as if I can't believe that. But I can believe it, because the industry took a total turn in how they operate. So, that's why this is a hard industry to be in. That's why, I'm concerned a little bit. Raising prices doesn't necessarily mean raising revenue. I think in this case it will, but we'll see how much. And that's just one thing I wanted to point out, because I've heard that a lot from, members of the council, but I've also heard it from, the public. It was one of the arguments made. I just think it's important to recognize that, maybe over time you can make an argument the ball was dropped because we didn't raise prices, but you can make just as strong of an argument that, we responded to the market and to the competition, and it's just a really hard industry to not lose money in.
Well, I think that, it's been suggested that, our fitness center works on a different model in terms of the clientele and the loyalties people have. So this will help test that to some degree. We'll see how that works.
Mr. President.
Mr. Yingling.
So, as probably some of you saw, that one of our council people must be watching somehow on Facebook, even though he's not on it. But he brought up an interesting point here about the user fee for within the city and outside the city, and took into account, there are capital expenses that city residents, could be kind of fitting the bill for, and suggested that we have a different fee for out of non-resident city members. And I actually tend to agree with him on that. So I'd like to suggest that we look at that. We would like to maybe change that number, or get your guys' thoughts on that.
On the annual maintenance fee?
The annual maintenance fee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that myself, actually. There are a couple of different ways to look at that. One is, is it set at the right level, and should, for city residents, and should, out of city members pay more, or should it be, or should we figure that because we've got more out of city members, that we can afford to drop it for city residents a little bit and charge the non-city residents, the full 40. Maybe it could be 35, 40, or it should be 40, 50, 40, 45. I mean, I think it's an interesting discussion. Ms. Gruber, how did you all think about that?
So we essentially didn't differentiate between city and non-city residents for the annual maintenance fee, only because that was a brand new fee that we were bringing forth to our membership body. So instead of instituting two different rates for residents versus non-residents, because we were focused on adjusting our monthly membership fees in that direction, we just decided that the annual maintenance fee that we were adding to our fee structure would remain static across the board. However, it certainly could be contemplated that we could also have a differential between city residents and non-city residents for that maintenance fee. I would suggest that it wouldn't be too steep, maybe $5, 40 and 45.
How about 50? That's not that steep.
Well, I mean, to me, that's the, when we were in a situation where Ms. Gruber seems to have managed to balance it on what she has. If we increase it a little bit, that gives her a little bit more cushion. I don't know that we need to, go to raise it so high that we're going to start being that much more off-putting to people.
I actually just conferred with staff who have been working on setting up this fee schedule in our ActiveNet trainer system. And one of the stipulations in that system that if you charge an annual maintenance fee, you can't have two separate rates. So that's a technical issue that we are up against at this point that I was just made aware of as well. So
one other thing to keep in mind is when you talk about a $5 raise or a $5 increase or decrease to that fee, if you're talking about an annual fee, $5 you're talking you're talking like $3,000 a year difference for the entire membership. Like if you raise the entire membership's annual fee by $5, for an annual fee, you're only talking a few $1,000s a year. So, I think that if you're looking at what's right and wrong when we're talking about a taxpayer subsidized program, like it makes some sense to do that. But from a financial, decision making perspective, it doesn't really make an impact. I think the real focus should be on the monthly rates. But,
okay.
I mean, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying let's give it the attention it's due, because it doesn't make a huge impact either way.
All right. Well, I think it was worth exploring for a minute. So my inclination is to leave it alone at this point, and let's see how it works for now. And we've got time to make adjustments later if we find that necessary. What do the rest of you think?
I frankly, I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should adjust the rates.
I mean, I don't have a strong argument in either direction. I think that it's I think it's a good idea to have a differential between city and non-city. I think that should be across the board with monthly rates and annual fees. I just don't know. You only want to have an annual fee go up so much. And so I don't know if the differential should be that big for the annual fee. And if you have a $5 or $10 differential for annual fee, I think that's fine. And I think that, but I also think that the monthly differential between city and outside the city should be $10 instead of $5. So at least at the family rates.
You're talking the monthly, as to your point, like right before we got to this, was that focus more on the monthly. Is that right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the annual fee.
Yeah. If we had a $5 or $10 differential in the annual fee, I think that's fine.
Right.
I wouldn't go any higher than that. But what I'm saying is I think the real focus, because the monthly fees is what make a difference. The annual fees, it's such a small difference, in the grand scheme of things. And, that can be a barrier to selling memberships. But those are my suggestions across the board, period, with this whole thing. If it were totally up to me, I'd raise the outside the city differential for the annual fee $5 or $10, and then $5 more to the monthly for outside the city. And that those are the only changes I would make. If you were asking what my opinion was on this, that's what it is. So I don't want to overcomplicate it. That's what I think.
That seems to make sense to me. I think it comes back to that the business that we're in is very difficult. So, it's just a difficult business to be in. So I would support the mayor in that.
Well, I think, if it's a difficult business to be in, and I think the mayor made the argument just a few minutes ago that higher prices are a challenge for any gym to remain in business because of the way they operate, and we operate on a somewhat different model than others do. So it seems to me that if we really want to give this a chance to work, going ahead and trying to really ramp up the fees right now is going to certainly be counterproductive to giving this a chance to work. I mean, I think the goal here is not to say we're going to price it so that we are going to make it that people aren't going to want to participate in the family center. The goal is to try and find a medium where Ms. Gruber can operate without a significant operating deficit. I mean, I just want to go back to the point I made in lots of other finance committee discussions on this, that I think this is a public good. I think we ought to be providing a fitness center. And I think that, if we're talking about, I mean, I don't see a reason to try and make a profit off of it, which is, where we're headed if we, just start ramping up the fees, beyond what's been suggested here. So it seems to me that we should give Ms. Gruber a chance to make it work at the levels she suggested, which is based on her market study, and take a shot from there.
So first off, I have two things to say to that. One, we're not headed toward making a profit off of this in any way, and we never will. So because if you raise prices too much, you lose members. So exactly. We're never going to profit off of this, because we don't. There's a core group of people that like it there. They like the group fitness. But people that attend and they do group fitness, gyms can't make money off those people. So it's the idea of it profiting if we raise too much money is just, that's not possible. It's not going to happen. But I guess here's how I feel. As a committee, I'm giving advice as how I see things, as someone that is a business owner and looks at these things. But you also know how I feel about the gym industry. I feel like it's a really tough industry. It's one that I would never want to be in. It's a hard industry to even break even in. And look, I mean, we have a gym we're just trying to get it to be revenue neutral. When if you looked at it as a business, doesn't have rent to pay, doesn't have a lot of expenses that gyms in the private sector have. And we still can't, we've had trouble getting it close to even without having all those expenses. So I would just like to point that out. But here's how I feel. I think we're giving advice as a committee, but this is something that when brought up, Ms. Gruber said that she thought she could make this revenue neutral or close to it. So at the end of the day, I want this to be her plan, because, I don't want her to say I can make this happen and then not be given the chance to. I think, if she says she can make it happen and then we make every decision about the pricing, we're not giving her a chance to make it work with her ideas. So I'm giving what I think is, advice, and that's how I'm viewing it. I think that, the way this was structured and the way Councilman Kovaci presented this was, we should be pretty hands off. We're taking the money, we're moving it to another place in the budget. And Ms. Gruber's been tasked with working that out. She said, she was up for it. So we're up to it. So I don't want to be totally in the mix saying this is what we need to do. I'm just saying this is what I think we should do. And it's up to her. That's my view of it. I don't want to micromanage every piece of this. I'm asked what I think of it, and I've said what I think of it, and largely, I don't think the differences that in how I would personally do it and what was presented are that different. I mean, I want to point that out, that even though I made a couple of small suggestions, I think overall the change to the pricing is probably a pretty good shot at the best balance. So I don't think it's far off from what I would have presented myself. I've made it clear what the differences are, but I think they're small overall. I'm done. I'm off my soapbox now. That's it. That's all I had to say.
I have nothing else to say.
Council President Pecoraro?
Ms. Matthews.
May I pose a question to,
Sure.
I guess, I don't know if it's Ms. Gruber or Ms. Palmer. Obviously, the plan that we're doing is on a full fiscal year basis, which due to circumstances outside our control is not actually going to be the case. I don't know which one of them is best positioned to answer this, but it feels like putting in full fiscal year numbers when we don't expect the gym to be open as of July 1st may not be the best approach. We can certainly do that. I think I just want to say that if we don't have revenue coming in and it's a break-even plan, then something needs to happen on the expense side to balance that out. Whether it's for a full, if it's for a partial year, in FY 2021. So at this point, I think Ms. Palmer just simply needs numbers to be able to plug into the budget so that we can get to the point of having a budget ordinance. And I don't know, Ms. Palmer, if you, this is a better question for Ms. Gruber, but at this juncture, I assume what Ms. Palmer would be doing is taking the full fiscal year numbers that Ms. Gruber presented during her presentation. But once again, if we don't have the revenue side coming in on July 1st, we need to make some adjustments on the expenditure side. So once again, I'm not sure whose question that is. I just want to point that out because my interest is just making sure that things cash flow with what we're doing on the Phase 3 plan.
Mr. Chair?
I think Ms. Palmer is weighing in.
This is Tammy Palmer. We can always put it in the budget and make decisions later regarding whether we actually spend the money that's in the budget or not. I mean, if we are still under closure mandates by the governor as of July 1st, I assume then that we would be able to make decisions regarding expenses at that point.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, Ms. Palmer, that you had the numbers you need because we still have a lot of data that has to go in behind the scenes, and just wanted to make sure that we had sort of final numbers that you could, take forward from this point on.
I believe that we have, we'll use Ms. Gruber's numbers.
Okay.
Right. Very good. Well, and we'll certainly make adjustments along the way if we have to. I mean, if we wind up not being able to reopen until the fall, we'll have to make some serious decisions then, but or along the way. But yeah, I think that at this point, it's hard to plan for what's going to happen when we don't know. And in fact, I've been surprised. I think the governor's opening some things up more quickly than I thought he would originally. So I don't know what's and I'm not saying I'm not encouraging the reopening of fitness centers because I think there's some inherent risks in that. But who knows what he'll do. So I think when that happens, we'll have to make our own decisions about whether we think it's safe.
Mr. President,
Mr. Yingling.
May I suggest that we have quarterly updates on the status of the fitness center at our council meetings?
Sure, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Well, we have Ms. Gruber in attendance regularly, so we could, we can even make it more often than that if we need to. But. All right, anything else to be discussed on this then?
I don't believe so. I think we have the direction that we need.
All right, great. So we move on to the pool issue?
Yes, my understanding from the discussion on May, I believe it was the 18th, was that the mayor and common council's desire was to move forward with the pool within a pool option to deal with the leaks we have in the main pool, as well as kind of building a new filtration building and kind of other assorted plumbing issues. There was some discussion, which the mayor can certainly jump in on, at the Recreation and Parks Committee meeting about the splash pad, and I believe that committee's recommendation, which I don't know if it's been forwarded to you all or not, was to basically pursue grants for that. I think as Ms. Gruber pointed out, rightfully so at that meeting, any grant cycle that would be, that we would possibly qualify for is going to probably fall outside the parameters that everyone was looking at for dealing with the pool within the pool as well as the filtration building. Is that correct, Ms. Gruber?
Yes, that is correct.
So assuming that that is the, like I say, that's what I believe I heard from the full elected body on May 18th. That had, depending on, how much we end up into some contractual engineering and inspection costs. I think the Letharian report, and once again, Ms. Gruber and Ms. Mullendorf, if I misspeak, please jump in. I think just the anticipated construction cost for the pool within the pool and the filtration building and the plumbing was around $1,032,000. I think I may have that number right. And then we were anticipating that there may be some contractual cost for, actual design for the bid specifications and perhaps construction management. So we were somewhere in between the $1.4 million in terms of actual construction cost. if we basically were to go through bonding through the CDA, there were obviously some issuance cost. So I think for the purpose of this committee, assuming that the actual structure or focus of the work, that I've captured that correctly, for this committee, and I guess just for probably the entire group eventually, but is how do you want to pay for it?
Are the bonding, could you bond the engineering and inspection costs?
Yes, those would be, Ms. Palmer, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those are considered valid project costs, and we did turn those in with our preliminary application, correct?
That is correct. We would need to adopt an intent to reimburse if we were to start the engineering prior to the bond issuance, though.
So I think I sent you, I had requested following the meeting on May 18th of the Mayor and Common Council, I had requested 2 debt service scenarios from the CDA, and those were sent to the committee late yesterday afternoon. One was for a principal amount of 1.45, one was for 1.25. If you've had the opportunity to look at that information, obviously there's assumed interest rates here that may or may not hold true depending on the market. But at the 1.45 level, the maximum interest cost that the city, maximum debt service the city would pay in any 1 year, assuming a 20-year term, and the assumed interest rate that the CDA used was $92,610 for a $1.25 million principal amount, same 20-year term, same assumed interest rate. It was maximum debt service in any 1 year during the 20-year term was $81,160.
Okay. So does anybody have any thoughts on, the alternative, I guess, would be to pay some of the costs out of other funds and borrow the lesser amount. Is that a consideration that you're suggesting, Ms. Matthews?
I think that is an option. I think Ms. Palmer and I have had a lot of discussion about this over the last day or so, and what to recommend. And I think it's challenging we can't just simply isolate this issue, because how you approach this issue has ramifications for other aspects. So as I had shared, I know with some of you, it does appear that the city will be closing on the former West End School property, for example. Family and Children Services is planning to buy that building. We have a purchase contract in place, as you know, and they have secured their state funding. So I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but it's roughly $450,000. Certainly a one-time cash infusion is appropriate for a one-time capital project. Ms. Palmer did a fairly detailed analysis for me yesterday about our projected cash flow, and I think the concern that she and I would have about taking our cash reserves down too low is that we all are well aware that we have a looming issue with the fiber fund not being self-supporting. That I think we all need to be cognizant of, because at this juncture we don't have, the state loan proceeds are going to run out, as you all know, in a couple years. So then I think juxtaposed against that is the numbers we gave you for bonding. Certainly interest rates appear to be low, but I think the committee needs to wrestle with how are we going to make the debt service payments. If you thought about the capital improvement program this year, the non-utility capital, as you may or may not recall, part of the reason we were able to do what we were proposing to do in FY 2021 is that we were fortunate that we had $360,000 in equipment purchases that qualified for use of benefit assessment monies, which I don't believe that's happened my entire tenure here. We're using some forfeiture funds to do some things on police, but in the absence of having had the luxury of using those other funding sources, we would have been severely constrained in our ability to pay for capital in FY 2021. So I do think probably some mixture of using some cash and a lower bond amount is probably what Ms. Palmer and I would recommend, and certainly I want to make sure she has the opportunity to weigh in. But I would say even with a lower bond amount, if there's not a new funding source to pay that debt service, the committee does need to be cognizant of the fact that it is going to constrain the city's ability to, absorb even $80,000 to $100,000 of debt service without impacting your ability to fund other capital. Ms. Palmer, is there anything you'd like to add? Or, like I say, I know you've done a lot of analysis, certainly in much more depth than I have.
I think the only addition that I would have is that the original budget that was presented included the full project, and the engineering costs were based on 15% of the full project cost, which totaled, the engineering and design totaled $385,500. I'm sorry, engineering and inspection. If we were just to do the first two options as were noted in the memo that was released, that construction cost comes in at just a little over $1 million. 15% of that would only be $154,800, which would make your full project cost a total of $1.186 million. So it's not quite 1.4. You still, if you were going to bond part of it, you would need to find a revenue source to pay for debt service in the following years. That's all I have.
Ms. Palmer, if I may, Chair Pecoraro, is there a certain amount, and I know once again it all kind of ties into the larger fiber fund issue, but Ms. Palmer, is there a certain amount of cash, whether that's coming from the sale of West End School or just general unrestricted cash, that you feel comfortable, and I know that's a relative term, that could be applied to the pool improvements, or that you're feeling that's more of a judgment call for the committee?
Well, it's 100% the committee or the entire legislative body's decision on how they determine to spend their surplus cash. It's either going to be one project or the other, or some portion of both. I mean, you have a limited amount of cash without increasing your revenue streams in some manner.
All right. Well, it certainly seems to me that using the funds from the sale make a lot of sense. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Mr. Mayor, I think you might be muted.
I was. I've judged all of you for doing that. Now I'm here. So
happens to the best of us.
Yeah, I've been zooming a lot though. I thought I was pretty good at it until right now. So I think I think that's a good idea. I think that we're, I think we have to pick the best way to do this. I think there are pros and cons to both directions. I think the one thing that helps is that we're selling this property. So I think we've picked up some really good strategic properties over the last couple of years that will in some ways help our operating budget. But with I think using this property to either soften the hit to our operating budget if we do bond this out, or debt service, or if we end up using capital. I think either way, I think this property, which is something that I don't think has been on our mind for a little while, ever since we were done dealing with the actual legal portion of selling it. I think now that it's been a while since we've revisited, I think it kind of it wasn't the top of my mind. So I think it was a nice surprise when Ms. Matthews brought it up, and I think we should use it for this purpose.
Mr. President, I think you're.
Go ahead, Mr. Yingling.
No, go ahead. You were saying something.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that I think we should go ahead and maximize the amount of that money we can put towards this project, and make the resulting debt service as low as we can. And I will leave those calculations to you, Ms. Palmer. Mr. Yingling, did you want to?
Yeah, no, I agree with both the mayor and the Mr. President. The debt service, for whatever the amount is that, well, actually, let me back up. So have we come to consensus that we should bond this? And Ms. Matthews, we should be making a decision today how we're going to pay for the pool? Is that accurate? Bonding or capital?
Yes, that is correct. We are on a very, very tight timeline, as I mentioned before, to go through the necessary steps in order to even participate in the CDA issuance. So, as I had shared with the mayor and council president previously, Ms. Palmer and I have gone ahead and had Lindsay Rader, our bond counsel at Funk and Bolton, prepare the necessary legislation that is in the process of being reviewed by the CDA as we speak. We need to plug in a dollar amount. That's a maximum threshold, so that can certainly be adjusted. Our critical deadline for being in the process is we've got about less than 60 days, basically, to finalize everything.
If we bond this, whatever the debt service is, I don't know, $60,000 after we use the capital from the schoolhouse, where does that come from? And I mean, do we have it?
Well, and I hate to answer a question with a question, Councilmember Yingling, but to some degree it's a matter of policy. The debt service for this would be paid for out of the Capital Projects Fund, which is the non-utility capital fund. So during my time with the city, we obviously had some makeup to do on our street improvements. So I think in my roughly first year, did recommend that we basically do a bond issue to try to get caught up on some of our deferred street maintenance. That was a principal amount of $5 million, and basically we absorbed those debt service payments just in the Capital Projects Fund. So what this would be doing is adding another component of debt service being paid for out of that fund. I think, Ms. Palmer, correct me if I'm wrong, besides the street bonds, there's also some, I believe, relating to the parking garages and the Green Street Bridge. Is that correct? That come out of the Capital Projects Fund?
That is correct. We're currently paying about $750,000 a year in debt service. That will reduce in the year 2023 by about $150,000, and then further reduce in 2026. That would be the Green Street Bridge and the garages coming off in those years. And then the only debt service that we would have after 2026 would be the paving, and that comes in around $340,000 a year.
And just one more question, because I think Mr. President asked this a while ago, and forgive me because I don't remember what the response was. So when we're talking about some of this debt that we have, is there opportunity now to refinance any of that debt to lower the payments? Sorry, Mr. President, I think you said something about this a while back.
I did ask this a while back. You're right.
And maybe you did answer that, Ms. Palmer.
I can answer that for you.
That can alleviate some of the pressure on that capital fund. So just thoughts on that?
I can answer that for you. Because the two loans on Green Street and the parking garages are so short term, that they both expire within the next 5 years. So it wouldn't be worth your issuance costs to try and refi those. The other loan, the paving loan, is too new. You can't touch that for 10 years, and so we can't go anywhere with that one as well.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you.
I have a question. I
Mayor.
just want to clarify something. So whether we pay for this, out of our, the city's cash reserves, or if we're paying a debt service, is that money coming from the same place no matter what?
Yes.
Okay. So, because I think one of the reasons I was confused on that is because that's not how it works with fiber. So, looking at how that's subsidized by the general fund, I guess that changes my thinking a little bit on this. So
yeah, I think keep in mind that the fiber fund is structured as an enterprise fund, which is intended to be self-supporting. Ultimately, it just doesn't happen to be the case right now.
And I get all that. I was just, I just wanted to clarify that because I wasn't 100% certain, and I said something earlier that was incorrect because of that. So I just wanted to make sure, I wanted to make sure that no matter what we do with this, it's coming out of the same fund, because that matters. If we were going to have to pay for debt service out of like our normal like operating budget, and it would have to come out of the general fund or some other fund as operating costs. I just wanted to I wanted to know where the money was coming from exactly, because I think that's important here. I think that does changes my thinking a little bit, because I know there are challenges either way. We just have to pick the best of the two challenges that we want to.
So the other question I would have, Ms. Matthews, is if we use this $400 and some thousand from the sale of the old school building there, and that significantly reduces the cost, of what we would be borrowing. What's the argument at that point to say, well, now we're down to, $700,000-800,000 that we would have to borrow? What's the, what thinking is there about, going ahead and just paying for it at that point out of our reserves? And does that make any sense?
I think that's a great question, and actually it's what Ms. Palmer and I were communicating about yesterday and actually before your meeting this morning. And I think she's been doing some analysis of where she projects we may end up. Obviously this has been, fiscal year 2020 has been sort of a very strange year with the pandemic and all the associated disruptions we've had. We can certainly do some more analysis, and Ms. Palmer has done that, so I'm going to turn it over to her. I think we can, we may be able, to say we have the cash to do this. I think she and I just feel obligated to point out that, we all have this issue with the fiber fund that that I think you all are committed to addressing sooner rather than later. But once again, I think it's a matter of policy, I think, how you want to use your unrestricted cash. Ms. Palmer, I know you've done some analysis. Do you want to weigh in? Because I know you spent some time on this yesterday.
Certainly. I'm actually looking for the email that I sent you yesterday.
You want me
to... one moment.
I can.
Okay, so we currently have a large surplus of unrestricted cash. And I know that we've already dedicated some of that cash to 45 West Main Street. Basically, once you get through all of that, you have a little over $10 million. Now, that sounds like a tremendous amount of cash until you consider that you have about $1 million worth of debt service coming to the fiber fund every year. And unless there's a resolution, that would, come through a transfer from the general fund. So if you look at it in that sense, you're looking at about 12 years worth of cash that you would have to pay off the fiber loan, assuming that there weren't enough revenues to pay for it. Now, we know that the fiber fund is making some revenues, certainly not to the tune of $1 million a year would be coming from the general fund. So, taking all that into account, I think that, you should just be aware that you have a limited amount of reserved cash. You currently know that you have a debt service that we don't have a revenue stream for at this point, and that, if you're going to continue to chip away at that reserve, that is going to put you in a situation somewhere in the future regarding the fiber service.
Mr. President.
Mr. Yingling.
Just Ms. Palmer, one more time for the debt. Did you say that in 2023 there is going to be a loan that will be paid off, and then the other one's what, 2026, and then you'll say that then the only debt service, assuming nothing changes, will be the paving loan? Is that right?
That's correct. So essentially you go from about $760,000 in debt service down to $340 after 2025.
Where would we be at after 2023? I'm just curious.
You're going from 764 to 593. That's a difference of 1 second.
Okay, that's fine. That gave me a general. Okay.
Yeah, about 100. Yeah, you'll have about $171,000 relief from debt service.
All right, so significant drop off over the next few years, which is helpful. So what do you all think? Should we bond?
I'm leaning towards bonding it, knowing that the debt service is going to drop significantly in 2023. I do want to be aware of our cash reserves I'm leaning towards bonding it, you know.
Mr. Mayor?
I agree. I agree, especially knowing what debt we kind of have coming off the table over the next few years. I mean, I was kind of on the fence before that, but I think bonding it out is the way to go.
Okay. And I think that makes sense. So I think Ms. Matthews and Ms. Palmer, I think you've got your direction on that then.
Okay, so I know we have a vote to go into a closed meeting soon. I think where we're going to take this now is Ms. Palmer and I will work with Ms. Gruber and Ms. Mullendor, finalize what the principal amount is, as Ms. Palmer alluded to. The engineering and construction management fees were based on a higher project total than we're now looking at. We'll basically go make those adjustments. And what I would anticipate our next step being is that you will likely have a ordinance coming before you on July 8th. That will basically be the introduction of the ordinance that would authorize the bonding through the CDA. And we'll start working with Ms. Rader to basically figure out all the public hearing dates and other associated actions that need to take place in conjunction with the CDA.
All right, great.
And just
Okay.
just to be clear, we're not using the proceeds from the sale of the West End. Is that correct?
No, I think we were, right? We were going to
do
use
both. I want to. Does it make sense to do that and then bond out the rest?
Okay, just wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
Is there a reason not to though? Like, I guess my question is, like in terms of like the terms of the loan or the bond, would they change in any significant way with a lower amount?
No.
Okay, good to know.
All right.
Yeah, I say we put that money toward it and then bond out the rest. That's what I think we should do.
I agree. All right, thank you. So, go ahead, Ms. Matthews.
I think we have your direction on that, and we'll just go ahead and I will just double check and just confirm. I have been in touch with them recently, but just make sure that nothing has changed, with the Family and Children Services and anything on that end. And I'll just, explain to them that it's very critical that we stay on track.
Great. Okay.
The other item that we had before you go, have your vote to go into, I'm sorry.
Hold on real quick. I'm sorry, but that just threw a wrinkle in it. Are you saying we have a date to go to close with that money, right? Because all of a sudden,
right.
if that doesn't close, we're in trouble.
No, I think we're safe. I mean, I've been in touch with them. My understanding is for their obligations through their own funding sources that they have to close on the property by June 30th.
Okay, all right.
But I want to make sure, I mean, like I said, I've been in touch with them kind of constantly throughout this process. They've told me that they have their state funding secured, and they've invoked the June 30th date, but just because of the criticality of what we publish in these public hearing notices, I'm just going to do my extra due diligence to just circle back around and make sure there is not a single hint that this is not happening. But yes, they have said that they've needed to close by June 30th because they wanted to close on the property in conjunction with closing on their financing through the state. And that's in writing from Family Children Services.
And the only reason I ask that is because of the ongoing negotiations that we've had with them. So
Right. Yeah, it's important to make sure we know where we are with them. That's very
Yeah,
good.
and like I say, I've not invoked that we were planning to use the funding for a capital project because it wasn't relevant at the time. But we'll just make sure that, so that there's nothing that could possibly go wrong. Because like I say, once we publish the amount for the bond, we're kind of committed at that point because there's, we have to advertise it and things of that nature.
Right. Okay.
The only other item, Chair Pecoraro, that we had, and I don't know that there's really much that you all need to do with this. It does have an impact on the budget. Is the Recreation and Parks Committee at their meeting Tuesday afternoon did discuss the status of summer camps. That committee, Ms. Gruber, and you all have a copy of her memo, raised a number of the logistical issues. This was prior to the governor's news conference Wednesday afternoon. Certainly the governor's executive order that goes into effect today, allows certain outdoor camps, but the restrictions are quite significant. Ms. Gruber and Ms. Mullendor, please jump in, but I believe staff raised a number of logistical, operational issues associated with holding summer camp. The Recreation and Parks Committee, once again, I don't know whether their recommendation got forwarded to you, was that probably we not hold camps this summer. Ms. Gruber and Ms. Mullendore had conveyed at that meeting that they would like to have a final decision made by June 1st, which I think is Monday, just so they can start notifying parents. So that was the last item on this committee's agenda. From a budget standpoint, it just means that we would remove some of revenues from the FY 2021 budget as well as expenditures. This is budgeted to be a break-even program. Ms. Gruber, is there anything you'd like to add, just so we can resolve this issue for you?
Not at this time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So we received an email from Mr. Dayhoff forwarding Ms. Gruber's memos. And it's my understanding that the committee's recommendation is that we not, at this time, that we don't move forward with summer camp. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure it's really a decision by the Finance Committee, but I think that I'm reluctant to second guess the Recreation and Parks Committee, on something like this, and the staff.
Yeah, we had been asked to put this item on this agenda, I think just because it does have an impact on the budget. So if this committee has no objection, Ms. Palmer and I will just work with Ms. Gruber and Ms. Mullendore because, summer camp sort of crosses a little bit. So there will be hopefully a couple weeks of summer camp a year from now
Right.
that financial activity will fall within the FY 21 budget. So with this committee's concurrence, she and I will just work with Ms. Mullendore and Ms. Gruber to adjust the numbers that are in the budget proposal that was introduced once again, so we can have final numbers for you for your meeting on June 8th.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And then I think the last item that was on your agenda was just a vote to go into closed session with the city attorney. I think, Chair Pecoraro, if you can have the vote will take place in this meeting, and then Ms. Visosky had set up the closed session as a separate meeting with separate invites. Is that correct, Ms. Visosky?
That is correct. So that way we can make sure everything's completely closed out from recordings, live, Facebook, and all of that. So just
All right.
caution.
Mr. Yingling, do you have a motion for us?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to go into closed session under annotated general provisions, Article 3-305B, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter and to consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation.
All right. Thank you. And I'll second that and take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. That seem to have it, the ayes have it. And so we will now move into a closed session. Thank you all very much for joining us this morning, and we will talk to you again another time. The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.